Hello, and thank you for watching this weekly ag weather update brought to you by Ag Carolina Farm Credit. My name is Eric Snodgrass, and I'm a senior atmospheric scientist and co-founder of AgWeather Incorporated, and I serve as the director for undergraduate studies in atmospheric science at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign. Well, check out this satellite animation from sunup to sundown on Sunday. What we're watching here is very important for our setup for weather this week, and here it is really quickly. First of all, on Monday, we're still going to be dealing with this lingering boundary that on Sunday kicked up a lot of showers and thunderstorms through the Carolinas. We will also be watching the system that moved through the Great Plains and through the central, kind of the Midwest here on Sunday, moving toward the southeast on Monday. And as you get toward the end of this, you'll see the southwestern monsoon really kick up because that's where the ridge is currently positioned, and that's why there's so much heat, drought, and major forest fire problems, which you'll see at the end of this animation. So here we go. So watch the storms blow up right here. See the boundary sliding through right there on Sunday afternoon. Here's the system coming through the Midwest. That'll get over toward the southeast the next couple of days. As they pause this towards sunset on the East Coast, look at the smoke from Central Valley of California to southern Oregon, spreading all the way across the west into the Midwest, into the central states here. And these storms, which are forming on the clockwise flow around this big ridge out west, were nasty in this part of the country. And this is the setup of things moving toward the southeast with time. So this is important to kind of see what happened on Sunday. Now, to put that into context, here's the last 14 days of precipitation expressed as a percent of normal. That's on the left. And then we have our last 3 days of precipitation leading up to late in the evening on Sunday evening on the right. Starting on the left, well, we've seen big player in our flow pattern has been a big dominant Bermuda high, pumping in quite a bit of moisture up along the East Coast. So that's why things have been very, very wet along the East Coast overall over the last 14 days. A lot of big thunderstorm complexes. Corn Belt, some regions have been dry, although we have seen some recent precipitation come through this area and help out. So when we talk about the corn and soybeans growing in the Carolinas as well, we have been dry through parts of the Corn Belt, although it's been cool there as well. Blazing hot in Texas, very, very dry, and that heat stretches all the way up the west coast of the United States. So those are our big factors, over the last couple of weeks. When we look over the last 72 hours, right where that boundary has been situated, which is right in through here, that's where we've had our heaviest rainfall amounts. So it's not been one of these things where everybody's been getting the rain here over the last 3 days, so Friday through Sunday, especially farther to the west, you get over to the higher country here into the mountains, but you get down to the Piedmont and the coastal plain, things have been very, very stormy through parts of northern South Carolina. All right, with this as the backdrop, this is the flow pattern that's going to set everything up to start this week. Got several big players here. Let's pause it and take a look at things. First, big ridge out west. Fires continue. Heat continues. That plunges into a trough that's kind of situated just like this. And that trough is going to be swinging toward the southeast over the next couple of days. Big dome of high pressure sitting just off the coast, and look at the flow around it just like this. As that trough digs down here, that's going to help funnel a lot of moisture right up through the East Coast, keeping things very wet here over the coming days. And that's what our big feature is that we have to talk about moving forward here. So let's get to that. Let's watch an animation showing us the next 3.5 days. So that gets us through early Thursday morning of precipitation when we accumulate all of it. So as we get into the day on Monday, widely scattered showers and storms still initiated along that boundary, that front that's sitting right in through here. But as this deeper trough digs in, watch how things change once we get into Tuesday. There it is. Then really Wednesday and Thursday. You see that trough finally digs far enough to the south by Wednesday into Thursday, and we tap into enough Gulf moisture, and you can even see, look at the precipitation bands, they're even oriented around that big Bermuda high sitting over here, that we are not shutting down this week in terms of precipitation. So wet finish and a wet finish to last week, and we're going to go right back into our active thunderstorm regime middle of this week toward the end of this week. So we're looking at total accumulation amounts here, getting in excess of an inch, in some locations much more than that, as that trough finally digs down here and initiates the development of a lot of these storms. All right, from there I want to show you what the next 7 days look like from both our long-range European model, that's on the left, and the long-range GFS model, which is on the right. And basically you see there's some pretty strong agreement on what's going to be happening over the next several days. We are expecting widespread 1 to 3, maybe 1 to 4 inches of rainfall across much of the southeast. And again, all of that is complements of that flow pattern I just set up. Trough digs in here, Bermuda high spirals in like that, and we just funnel moisture into this area. And as that happens, well, we just get lots and lots of showers and thunderstorms with this. So what I like about this is this means we're going to get through the end of July and the beginning of August without drought in the southeast. Without drought. This is going to reduce the efforts put in by irrigation wells, but this is still quite a bit of rainfall, much wetter than average, and it's not even coming from a tropical system. Now, because of that flow pattern, here's what your temperature anomalies look like Monday through Friday of this upcoming week. We can see overall that while it's going to be quite cold, much cooler than average, it's not going to be cold, but cooler than average in the central plains, we can see that because that trough finally digs far enough to the south and there's going to be a lot of cloud cover and precipitation, we will be a few degrees cooler than average here along the southeast getting into the Carolinas. So a few degrees cooler than average to start this week. Now, there is a shift coming in the overall flow of the atmosphere, and this is what I want to talk about. You see, now we're looking at the next 5 days, so that is this coming Friday all the way to next Wednesday. So we call that the day 5 to day 10 forecast. We will see the return of a ridge in the jet stream right here in the middle part of the country, hence the above average temperatures through a big section of the country. But notice we'll hang on to the near average to slightly cooler than average weather, at least through the next 10 days across basically eastern Texas all the way up to Washington, D.C. area. And then when we get to the day 10 to day 15 time period, we continue to see the forecast for near average temperatures, while points just to your north and west are going to be seeing above average temperatures due to that flow pattern. But I want to say this. I don't have much confidence in the forecast right now beyond day 10, and I want to talk with you about why, because it's very important for what's going on in the tropics. First, check out the flow pattern of the atmosphere. Blues are troughs, the warm colors are ridges. This gets us through Wednesday. This is the setup I was telling you about. See the trough digging in? See the big dome of high pressure sitting out over here? That is why from Tuesday, really Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we're going to be seeing a lot of precipitation in through this area. So that also brings in the cooler weather from this direction from that trough digging in. But as I continue to animate this out, watch how things change. You see, we start to see by the time we get into around August 5th or 6th, a bigger, broader ridge that's building out here. And it's raising the heights overall in this area of the atmosphere. What does that typically mean? Well, that typically means a return toward warmer weather. But we're going to be dealing with the effects of the increased cloud cover from all the precipitation in here, which is why we saw the near average temperatures overall. But this is a pretty big breakdown in the overall pattern, and this is what I mean. By the time we get into the 6th, 7th, the 8th, what we've now done is we've taken the ridge, which was once way over here, that's why the West was baking, and moved it to the central United States. That's a sizable shift. That's what brings the heat back into the Corn Belt, which you'll hear a lot of people talking about that as possibly causing some stress on the corn and soybean crops. But overall, we see that we're still kind of in a bit of a trough pattern here along the East Coast, and hence the near average temperatures. But that's a pretty sizable shift, and we're going to have to see how things continue to evolve beyond this. Now, before I get to my next slide, watch this. As I animate this out all the way to the end, do you see how the atmosphere tends to just flatten everything out? It won't do this. This is a 51-member ensemble forecast, and what this tells me is there's not much ensemble agreement beyond about day 10. That means something's in the models perturbing them, confusing the flow, and we need to talk about that. But I want you to remember this. Before we get into that discussion, we're going to finish the month of July with the southeast seeing near average to slightly below average temperatures for the month of July. So it was technically a bit of a cool July overall. So important to see that before we transition to this longer term discussion. Now, it's very, very, very crucial at this time of year that we pay close attention to sea surface temperatures. Here's the rule. Research has shown that when temperatures of the ocean surface, we also call those sea surface temperatures, get above 81 degrees Fahrenheit, that's all we need to develop or sustain a hurricane. We find that hurricanes don't form or live very long if the sea surface temperatures aren't at least 81. The map you're looking at there at the top shows you sea surface temperatures in Celsius. We make a very distinct color break at around 26 because that is, 26 Celsius is 81 Fahrenheit. Now, what I want you to see is to come down here. See this area I just highlighted? That's a big area of what we call the main development region. And that's where most of our hurricanes are born. And currently, the sea surface temperatures there are cooler than average. Now, they're plenty warm here, and then they're plenty warm when you get into the Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico to develop any sort of a system. But generally, because most of our early season systems are going to be born here, or not early season, but our August and September systems are born here off the coast of Africa, the cooler waters in that area, which I've been drawing over here, are actually good to suppress the start of this season as it really gets going here. But I want you to know, anything that gets going in the Caribbean, Gulf of Mexico, plenty of heat to work with. No trouble at all. Now, it's something else in the tropics, though, that we got to be thinking about with our week 2 and beyond forecast. And you're seeing it right here. This is next Wednesday, not this coming, but the following one, 10 days out. Both models, the European model and the GFS, are trying to develop a tropical system, probably a hurricane, off the southern tip of the Baja. Now, this is pretty far out in the forecast, but if they do, the models are confused on what to do with the remnants of this system as it tracks up the west coast. Now, why is that important for East Coast weather? Well, if this system does form and tracks in that direction and dissipates and dies before it hits California, of course, but if it does, that will affect the strength of the southwestern monsoon, which shifts the whole position of the jet stream a lot. And that's why there's so much uncertainty when we get beyond day 10 in the long-term forecast, which is why we give you these updates once a week so that you can kind of see everything evolve. So I'll be watching this, and you most certainly will believe we'll be talking about it in our next update that's coming out. Okay, at the end of my video, because this one could be a little longer here, I want to talk about the global weather pressures on crops so we can compare those to what are grown in the Carolinas. All right, one of my favorite maps here. You have what's called the Vegetation Health Index. On the right, that was last year's map at this time. On the left, that's the current year. A few things I'm looking out for here. In the northern plains, we do not have the same drought situation we had a year ago, and therefore we see a lot of these cooler colors indicating better, more healthy crops here. So look at the Corn Belt this year. Much different picture than a year ago. But I want you to focus on Europe, parts of Russia, and China. Right now, in parts of France and Germany, things are not looking so good. They're not looking good in the UK either. Very, very dry and hot recently. The Russian wheat belt shrunk from last year. Look at how good things look a year ago. Look at what they look like right now. And in China, we have some pockets of some stress in their major growing regions as well. So that's where we're going to start. This is where we're going to go next. Top map is the last 30 days of temperature anomalies. Bottom map, last 30 days of precipitation expressed as a percent of normal. Look at Europe. Much of Europe was very, very warm over the last 30 days. France, Germany, UK. Look at north of the Black Sea region, much of Russia, very warm as well. We've got a mixed bag of precipitation when we get over to Russia, but come back over to France and Germany and the UK. Very, very dry, and they're dealing with some major pressures on their crops. And I'm bringing this up because these are some of the stories that might move the markets this week. Next, check out what's going on in Australia. We're talking about a winter wheat crop down there that we're dealing with. So what's going on down there? Well, very, very dry, especially in the southeastern part of the continent. And that's where they grow a lot of that wheat. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that as well. And when it comes to China, we got a mixed bag. Far eastern parts of China have been relatively dry. So we're talking about south of Beijing. But get to the western part, things have been wet, and therefore the crops are probably looking pretty decent. So again, I just want to stretch this video out to give you some perspective here. Now, if we look what happened over the last week, check this out. In animation here, we can see our satellites were picking up on a system right over the Black Sea, bringing in widely scattered showers and storms. It wasn't until toward the end of the weekend that we saw a system come through parts of Europe and give us at least a chance for some widely scattered showers and storms. That's probably the two most important features I want to highlight in this animation. But to finish this all off, check out this picture. This is showing you the long-range European model picking up on the next 15 days total precipitation anomalies. Europe is going to continue to be hot and dry, especially in parts of France and Germany and the UK. In China, there's a wet bias being picked up on over the next 15 days. And it's also important to be paying attention this time of year to India, the Indian monsoon, which has been going pretty decently. It's supposed to go from June all the way to September. Well, it is really going to be kind of slacking and weakening over the coming days. And that's going to put some pressure on the crops grown in India, which could be reflected in global markets. That's because there's nearly 1.5 billion people that need those crops to come in good, and they need the monsoonal moisture to make it happen. Now, that was a lot, but I wanted to give you some global perspective about once a month so you can really keep an eye on these bigger picture things. But with that, I think I'll go ahead and wrap up this forecast video. We at Ag Carolina, thank you for your attention. Hope you look forward to our next update coming out next weekend. Thank you.